Hello, I'm Frances and super excited to be here today. I'm really excited to be talking about this topic today. A little bit of background as to why I'm here and who I am. I've been helping Allie with consulting for Good Elephant, specifically marketing, but a little bit of business development and strategy teased in there for about a little over a year now, right, Allie? And we kind of along the way talk a lot about topics and things resources that will be helpful for teachers. And the topic of being your brand, especially as a yoga teacher, continues to bubble up. So we thought we'd take some time today to go over the topic. I'll kind of tell you my credentials as to why I'm legit enough to be talking to you about this today in a second. And yeah, really excited to be here and be connecting with you wonderful, amazing Good Elephant teachers today. So just a quick overview of our journey together. I'll do a short little intro and background about myself. I'll talk about branding as a whole. It's just always good to kind of be on the same plane there as to what branding is and what it can be defined as. Then we'll dive into personal branding, why this is important specifically for what you all are doing and Good Elephant, and then giving you some tangible tips to take home. And then of course, I really want to, honor questions along the way. So you can either type them in the chat box to me. And then I think, it's usually best, I find that with the flow that we just answer the questions at the end and kind of like create a discussion. So a little bit about myself. This picture, ironically, was actually taken in San Diego, where Allie currently is today in June 6th. So depending on when you watch this recording, it might no longer be June 6th, 2019. But I am an East Coast native, born and raised in West Virginia, and always was chasing sunshine. So finally made my way out west into Reno, Nevada. I'm a wellness advocate. I've had my own personal healing journey through alternative modalities like yoga, meditation, and acupuncture. So it's something that's near and dear to my heart. And I'm a business nerd. So I have an MBA and I'm now a consultant for wellness brands. And I could talk about business all day, every day, if I was allowed. And then just my contact info there, I'll put it at the end too, but I definitely want to keep in contact with everybody. And I'm always happy to talk about this topic or anything else marketing, especially pertaining to Good Elephant in the coming days, weeks, and months. So a little bit about my professional journey. I was a rat race runner since 2012 to 17, definition being I was in the corporate world, climbing ladders, became director of marketing for a large company. And in the middle there, I decided to start pursuing an MBA at the University of Nevada, Reno. Ended up getting the confidence to quit my 9-to-5 job in 2017. And then shortly after established my brand as Frances Weiner. I say this specifically, I usually don't talk about my background in this way, but for the sake of this presentation, I think it's important to kind of give an overview of how I got into this brand of being myself. I actually, when I left my job, I thought, I'm going to start a wellness center because Reno, Nevada really needs a place for a lot of these healers to practice in. And, we don't have many wellness centers. And I quickly realized that I was being pulled in the direction from many different healers and practitioners and brands to be their business and marketing consultants. So I said, okay, I guess that's where my energy is right now. I'll follow that. And Frances Weiner just seems like the simplest way to brand myself instead of coming up with a name and then having to maybe pivot depending on what services and products I was offering. That was a scary process for me. I never thought I would be my own brand, but here we are. And now I'm giving a personal branding presentation. So day by day, I consult brands, often people, on how to craft their message and shine a light on their business. And it's something that I just absolutely love. It definitely doesn't feel like work to me. And it's, I think, a very important thing in 2019 to be realizing how often brands are people themselves. So that's just a little bit about me. And then, so brand, this word gets tossed around a lot. It can be an adjective, it could be a noun, it could even be a verb. And I think I just want to quickly kind of establish one of my favorite definitions of it. There's a lot of definitions out there, but I heard this one and it really sunk in with me. So Jeff Bezos, founder and CEO of Amazon, says a brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. It's kind of how you're perceived. And, sort of for my yogis out there, right, your aura and what value you bring. And I tend to err on the side that we all have a brand, right? It's just a question of whether we're curious about it or want to manage it and take it a step further. So personal branding, putting that personal word in front of the name, tends to then, I think, add another layer to branding. So what is it exactly? Great question. Let's maybe take a step back and think about our favorite yoga instructor. What do we like about them? What are you likely to go, why are you likely to go to their class versus maybe someone else's class? And the answer I tend to get with this question is, well, we like the style of the yoga they teach, rigor of their class, maybe their personality, just the way we kind of flow with them, so to speak, and how we can relate to them and their philosophy and their practice. And this all boils down to the instructor's personal brand and the way they offer value to their students. And I really like to think of it as the way we offer value instead of this kind of very, self-promotional way of thinking about it, because a lot of the time I get, the reaction, well, personal branding, it's very self-promoting and I don't really want to, be very egocentric and all that. But we all have value when we walk into a room, and we are the channel of that value. So I like to think of it that way. And then a personal brand is pretty all-encompassing. No big deal. It's what you do and how you do it. So again, and we can share this presentation afterwards. So you guys have these kind of specific things to think about. I know it's a lot of text on this slide, but it's really, if you think about it, the specific surfaces you offer, the type of classes, right? I think that's a big thing in the yoga community. Beginning of this call, we were kind of talking about the different types of classes we like and offer, the style in which you offer that class, where you teach, your personality, right? That's a big one. Those little touches you add, I think, can really, have a student walking away and saying, oh, I just love that, poetry reading she read at the beginning of the class, and that really resonated with me, or, going around with the essential oils or whatnot. Again, that personal yoga philosophy, I think, is a huge one. There's so much out there right now, I think, with yoga in 2019, that your philosophy and what you bring to the practice as an instructor can be really key. So kind of thinking about all of these things, I find is a helpful way to get your juices flowing about your specific personal brand when it comes to yoga. And just to pause here, is there any questions so far? And again, please, you can go ahead and put it in the chat if you want, or I was kind of thinking about it and I was like, oh, you guys can holler too if you want. We can make it pretty relaxed. Nothing? Okay, so no news is good news. I'll take it. I'll take that as a good sign. And I'll also check the message box here. Oh, maybe not. Okay. So why is this important? And I think I'm not getting full screen anymore. But that's okay, I think. Okay, we'll just stick with this. Why is this important? If you're not already kind of sold on the concept. I think more than ever before, yoga teachers work for themselves rather than for one studio. And I think in the case of Good Elephant, this is kind of the proof is in the pudding. And a lot of folks I know teaching with Good Elephant teach with maybe another studio, or they have their own services that they offer, maybe even in addition to yoga. So it's really become something that you do, for yourself and with yourself versus maybe just being a part of one studio. I think it's really interesting too, because part of the creation story of Good Elephant, as Ali's told, is the fact that she got her yoga certification, went into a studio, started teaching, and realized really quickly that, at a flat rate per hour, only, getting so many classes a week, that this was maybe not the most sustainable thing to do full time. So by Good Elephant offering 70% revenue per class to all the teachers, that just shows, how much we really want this to be able to be a business that you can have for yourself and have it, potentially even sustain you. So I think that's really exciting to think about. And we also asked Good Elephant students almost a year ago, we sent out a survey asking a couple questions, but one of the questions we asked was, what did you like most about your experience with Good Elephant? And 53% responded, my teacher. About 30%, because I get this question, what was the second? Was the fact that the community that it creates. So I think that's really special too, but no pressure here, teachers. However, 53% of folks go to and come back to classes because of you, at least. I mean, I would argue that this is only increasing this percentage. So that just shows how important the teacher is to the entire Good Elephant experience. And so to kind of get into some tangible tips, I thought would be helpful. Ali's heard me talk about this a couple times, but I thought, why not? We'll bring it up one more time. This idea of form versus function, you may have heard of it, especially engineers out there, maybe scientists, some background there. So the idea is, actually, I'll take it a step back. The idea is that we often get caught up in form. We think, well, I got to run my Instagram, or I got to work on my blog, and what about this website? How do I even start that? So those are all forms in which our message gets portrayed, right? Versus taking a step back and thinking, okay, first, what's my function? What's the message I'm trying to say? Who am I? All these pretty important questions to ask ourselves. So I really like this quote from the founder of Portion Self. If you analyze the function of something, its form often becomes obvious. So the idea that form comes after function, that first we need to think about, well, what are we trying to say? What are we trying to do? And then those forms will evolve from there. So for Good Elephant, for example, knowing that it's a class-based company where folks are going to events, Facebook, became the obvious channel to pump that information out because of how big Facebook is right now with their events. It's actually one of the #1 things they've been pushing for the past year or so. So I hope that's clear as an example, but just something to kind of think about. And the reason I bring this up is because I always encourage folks to be thinking about the function in which they're doing first before diving into the form in which they're gonna say it. And if you don't believe me, take it from Bradley Cooper himself, who in A Star is Born, I've maybe watched this movie about 5 times and listened to, maybe dozens of the interviews with him. And one thing that he talks a lot about is this first passage here, that the fact that talent comes everywhere, but having something to say and then a way to say it so that people listen, that's really the big thing, as an artist, they're trying to do. And I think artists, entertainment industry, Hollywood, so to speak, they've caught on to this personal branding idea very early, knowing that, even switching their name, to be a Hollywood name, and really working on their own brand, knowing that's what's going to get them gigs, I think is a good thing for a lot of other industries to model you know, obviously we don't want to go maybe too Hollywood at times, depending on what we're doing. But the idea that coming up with our message first and then figuring out a way to say it, that was one of his big messages in this movie. So, and I got all that from context of watching his interviews, like I said, over a dozen times. So just kind of something more to think about. And then, yes, while it is important what you say, how you say it is very important as well. So I don't want to just, you know, say function, you know, message. The how obviously is important as well. And a style, tone, and voice, you know, this is something that continuously comes up in the marketing and branding conversation. One thing I like to remind people is just because we're behind a screen doesn't mean we're not a human anymore. And thinking about when we speak on these platforms, just like how we'd speak in a one-on-one conversation, you know, outside of a yoga studio, and how would you want that conversation to go, and how would you speak when you're working on content digitally. It's okay to be, you know, yourself and not turn into this alter ego, which I know I can tend to do. And then I'm like, hold on, is this you, Francis? Or are you just turning into, you know, someone else just because your hands are on a keyboard? So speaking directly to your audience is really important. And that too, kind of the I statements, I think we tend to say a lot of like, this is what I'm doing. This is what, you know, my day. I challenge people to kind of turn those into you statements sometimes. So, you know, hey, you know, have you ever thought of yada, yada, and this is how it could be helpful, is something good to kind of think about when you're thinking of content. Attracting people to your essence. This is kind of the idea of the law of attraction. The more we are ourselves, the more folks will be attracted to that. And so I think this can come really naturally. And I'll talk a little bit more about the idea of selling yourself in a little bit here. And then thirdly, this is a big one, emotions lead action. And actually, I was just watching an interview with Mark Zuckerberg, and they're making huge changes right now to Facebook. And one of the things that they're going to make, maybe that'll be another webinar coming soon, is all these big changes happening to social media currently. But Mark, he is turning Facebook more from the town square feel to the living room, actually. And for some people, this may, you know, our minds go straight to Big Brother. That's definitely where my mind went at first. But this idea that he wants to create more one-on-one, meaningful conversations and really in connections versus, you know, all of us kind of in this big marketplace trying to promote and pump our stuff. That all being said, another big thing that he's going to do is really push posts that have emotional engagement. So like a heart or a laughing face or all those emojis that we use instead of just the ones that get the most likes. He's actually maybe going to pump the posts that get the most hearts or the most crying faces, because again, that's kind of tied to emotions more than just pumping yourself. Another huge change might be that Instagram no longer shows the amount of likes that a post gets, which I'm honestly really in favor of. But again, going back to this idea that we're having conversations on social media, not just competing for likes and followers. So anyways, not to get too much into my social media tangent, which I can easily do, but the idea that you can, really just be yourself through your style, tone, and voice on social media.
I have a question, Fran.
Yes.
So when you say speak directly to your audience, how do you know who your audience is? Or are you going to talk about that? Or...
Great question. No, I wasn't going to talk about that, but I'm happy to. Speaking directly to your audience, so if I was a yoga teacher, I would obviously, you know, you're thinking of folks that could be or are down the path of exploring yoga, as well as folks that are already practicing yoga, or even maybe folks that fell off the yoga train. Maybe Fran is in that bucket and want to get back in. but yogis kind of being that general audience. And then, you know, demographics is a funny conversation because we tend to go straight to, you know, these traditional demographics, age, gender, where the person lives. But actually, the demographics conversation is turning over more to shared values. So thinking about, okay, you know, folks that really value being environmentally friendly, or really value alternative healing modalities, or, you know, kind of thinking of demographics in that way versus, again, those kind of traditional, you know, categorizations that marketers have like to just by default use. How to find out who your audience is, testing it. Is it, so if you're starting to create content, and you can see who liked you, who's following you, who looked at your profile that week. And there's a lot of tools out there to do this, even beyond just the basic apps that are actually free or have like awesome 7-day trials, and you can quickly find out your audience and then delete the subscription like I do a lot. But finding out who is engaging with you and starting to analyze, you know, it takes time to kind of do that research and be that scientist, so to speak. But it can be really valuable to start to figure out who these folks are that are, you know, attracted to your essence, and what they, you know, what they talk about, and maybe what they, then you'll kind of start to learn what they want to hear. And then testing your content. So putting things out and saying, well, this didn't get me likes and this one got a ton of likes. So that might be, you know, the second posts obviously might be a lot more attractive to folks. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, and could it even be more specific than just yoga? Like I want to offer a class for people, you know, yoga for back pain, or, you know, something like that. And so maybe then my audience becomes even narrower, where I can talk to people who maybe have jobs where they're doing physical labor, or sitting at a desk all day, or things like that.
Definitely. And that's outcome-based kind of content, is the idea that we're talking about, you know, instead of talking about the act of doing yoga, we're actually talking about the outcomes of yoga. And then we're targeting the folks looking for that outcome. So Allie's a born natural marketer, whether she believes it or not. And you're exactly right. Like going after, yeah, exactly. And I knew I found yoga because I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So there's a great example right there. I didn't necessarily do it to be blissed out at the end. I did it because I was in extreme pain. And then at the end, I realized I was blissed out at the end. That was just an added bonus. But yeah, that's a great idea.
Cool, thanks.
Awesome. Was someone else did I hear another voice? No, okay. And then social media, these are, again, you know, everything I say, by the way, is just kind of through my experience and my recommendations. They all should have an asterisk by it saying, you know, you always want to go based on your own, how comfortable you are and your own situation. I know having 2 handles, for example, having a personal and a professional is not always the most convenient. So just kind of, yeah, these ideas are gray at times, but love it or hate it, we may just need it, and that is the conversation of social media. Making business related handles. So this idea, and I, you know, saying ditch the personal username, in a way, I've seen a lot of successful cases where they sometimes are still themselves. Like, for example, my handle is Frances Weiner, but I've just made the I've made the intention that I'm going to spend 80% of my content on on professional content. So I still have, you know, Frances Weiner, because again, that is my brand, but 80% of my content is targeted towards, you know, my current clients, prospective clients, business thinkers, etc. But the point of this kind of being that, do folks want to see your dog every day, or your living room, you know, or what you had for dinner, or do they want to see more business related content? And sometimes creating a separate handle just for that can be helpful for folks to kind of split the two, because they still want to keep their grandparents up to date. as to what they're doing, but they also want to be working on their business stuff. And I know as soon as I started posting a lot of business related things, I lost a lot of my personal, engagement from folks in my personal life, which I was okay with, but some people might want to kind of keep both worlds on social media. And then the second one, using multiple networks. So I try to really encourage people to use multiple platforms. If you're going to be overwhelmed by this, which many folks, including me, are, definitely just start with one. But just know that you're going to have quite different audiences these days on different ones. And I should definitely update this presentation because Snapchat I would actually no longer recommend for a lot of people, but definitely Facebook and Instagram. So just this idea that Facebook, you're going to tend to get the older demographic, and Instagram's definitely more on the millennial and Gen Z, kind of as a basic difference there, although there are plenty more. Emphasis on video content. So this is huge right now, and it's something that a lot of the platforms are pushing, just to continue to remember to put your videos out there, even though, yes, I know it can be pretty scary, but it's very, very important today. And then, yep.
One of our city leaders, Matthew, is really great at doing video content for his meditations and stuff. And all he does, like, he'll be on a walk with his dog in the woods, and he'll be like, "Oh shit, I forgot to do my video thing for tomorrow," and so he'll just do it there, and I'll just say, "Hey, I'm on a walk with my dog. I'm so excited for tomorrow's meditation. We're gonna be doing this and this. You're gonna feel this way, and I look forward to seeing you there." And that's it. And it's so easy. And he always talks about, how it's not a big deal to make a video. It takes literally as long as the video is. Just say what you're feeling, and so that's what he always says.
Go Matt. Woo. Yeah, no, it's definitely, it's just getting over the hump, honestly, and doing it for the first time was what I've found. And then it just becomes pretty natural, but it's, yeah. And if we're thinking of this all too as a building trust process, authenticity is key these days, and videos are a great way to just, cut through all the filters, so to speak, and really get to show someone your true authentic self. And that being said, getting personal. So, try not to shy away from sharing your values, thoughts, opinions. That's the idea of social media, or at its origin, is to be personal. And of course, though, there's a line wherever it exists. It's different for everybody and everybody's goals, but also keeping it professional as well. And okay, so kind of getting into some more tips here, serving versus selling. You guys, when you're on the mat in your groove as a teacher, you're very much serving. You're serving your students. You're the channel for yoga in that given hour of the day, and you're the guide. You're very much serving. And I feel like sometimes when we get off the mat, then we feel like all of a sudden, again, back on digital media, we have to sell. And I very much would recommend continuing to think in that mentality of serving, just like you do when you're teaching a class. This can be done in many ways, obviously, but I found, just to remind myself before I'm going to create a post or any kind of content, remembering I'm serving my audience with whatever I'm about to put out, versus selling them. And again, back to these big updates that are coming in from Facebook and Instagram, they are really going to start to not spread reach on posts that have call to actions, actually, which is a really big one. On posts that have a lot of promotional language around it, the algorithm is going to cut those posts short of getting a lot of reach. So they want brands to start to be human again, go figure. And they want us just to get back into that dialogue on social media. So that's just kind of interesting to think too, that selling on social media, it's probably going to hurt engagement quite a bit. And I'm happy to, if anybody's got questions about that, I could go down that rabbit hole even more.
Do you have any
Um,
examples of what, like an example of what selling versus serving would look like?
yeah, I think, selling, I'm just going straight to my Instagram for a second, thinking, because the second post is always usually a sponsored one. Yeah, here we go. A day camp. The first thing they said was introducing our new evening art program, open for ages 8 and up. And they go into all this detail about the camp. I think that's actually more on the serving, because they're updating people about a new program that this camp is going to have, and who can go and when they can sign up. And that's informational, that's valuable. So when you're thinking of serving, it's adding value to someone's day versus saying, you know, buy now, we've got this 2-for-1 sale going on and yada yada, when maybe, I mean, they're probably not. When you're scrolling through Instagram, are you even in a buying mindset? And I've had many folks, and a lot of research is saying that no, we're usually not even in that buying mindset. We're just in the wanting to soak in information mindset.
When I think of selling, I think of like saying things like limited spots available, sign up now, or you know,
mm-hmm.
that,
Yep.
you know, not much time to sign up yet, or making it you know, exclusive, or rushing people to go to take in a call to action, or you know, that's what I think of. Yeah.
Yep. And the fact that when I read that they were going to actually start to not spread these posts with call to actions on them, I was like, this is nuts, because a lot of the social media advertising has all been focused around these call to actions. So it's going to be a huge shakeup to kind of switch our mentality into more conversational and informative language. Yeah, so that's helpful. Allie, our marketer. So the next one, you folks, especially, you know, writers out there, but you may have heard of this idea of showing versus telling. It's one of my favorites because I tend to, you know, maybe one could call it mansplaining, but I like to maybe call it fransplaining, taking the gender out of there, or sex. But this idea that we go around kind of telling people, like, you know, you should really do yoga. And you know, you should, yeah. And that honestly isn't usually the most effective thing, versus showing them and the benefits of yoga, or just being there and being really happy. And then maybe they'll say, why are you so happy today? And be like, I just came from a yoga class. And then maybe they'll want to hear more about it. So I just like this picture a lot because it pretty much sums up the tell versus show idea. But is that kind of clear? Yeah. And then in content, I feel like, yeah, we can easily get into the telling idea, but just kind of, yeah, having these little, and honestly, writing these down and putting them on a piece of paper and putting them up in my office. I should probably do that myself, but that can kind of be helpful, and just like, okay, quick things before I write this post. And then the next one is being proud and honest about your credentials. So this is just one of the many yoga credentials I know that's out there, but there's, you know, a lot of, again, studies out there about how cultures and humans build trust. And one of the biggest for the United States, I couldn't say this for all countries, but for the United States, is this idea of credentials. So we still very much trust a certification or a degree. And so, you know, showing this, I think for yoga in teachers, this is tends to be more of a, obviously, like, yeah, if I'm out there teaching, I probably have credentials kind of a thing. However, for the students themselves, they might not even know or be aware of the fact that you have these credentials. And then, you know, just cool experiences. So for example, the fact that, you know, Ali, you studied in India, and that's where you learned a lot about yoga practice. That's really cool. And I think that's a great way to, you know, earn trust and with your students.
What would you say to, because we have a lot of meditation teachers or qigong teachers who don't have a very, they might not be officially certified, or their certification might not be as famous as like Yoga Alliance or something. How can they show, you know, how maybe they have a ton of experience, or how what would you suggest for those people?
No, that's a great question. While, I'm over here saying credentials, credentials, me, myself, I'm not always the first advocate of credentials. So I would say we all have a story as to how we got to the front of this room teaching this class. And sometimes I think we forget to tell that story. And that story, no matter how vulnerable or different or unique it might be, can really help earn and retain the trust of your students. So just telling, this is how I got interested in it, and this is how long I've been doing it in this, or this is, whatever unique angle you have on it, the place that you got introduced to it, maybe it's a different country, or the unique, community you were a part of in, the woods of California, and then you found, whatever that story is, I think could be really helpful. And yeah, being proud of that and not just saying, hi, I'm Francis and I'm here to teach you today, and then just kind of leaving it at that. So definitely giving people context, whatever that context is, always helps to build and earn trust. All righty. And then this next one, I am very guilty of myself, letting go of perfectionism. So, I hear this all day. My logo and colors must be perfect. And they, folks get really tied up on this idea of branding. And, it's one of those things where Facebook's logo, apparently it took like 20 minutes to create. Look at them now. Apple's a very similar story. So this idea that the look and the color and the feel and the photos, everything has to be perfect. If you are going to spend time and quality on anything, visuals, definitely, whether that's audio, video, or photography. But, a lot of these other kind of shiny objects around the content that we tend to get hung up on, I would just nudge you again to kind of, good. Sometimes you have to just ask yourself, this isn't great maybe, but it's good enough. And then clicking that go button is way better than absence sometimes. All right. And then last but not least, I have total confidence that you've got this, whether you're, after this presentation, interested in pursuing this idea of personal branding further, as a yoga instructor and meditation, qigong, as a healer, I'll say, you've got, a lot in there. And sometimes it's really scary to pull it out and to show the world. We're so used to kind of helping others, I think sometimes, especially the folks listening to this, that, we forget, have I worked on my own business yet, versus working in the business, which is more of going and teaching, versus working on your business. So I encourage you to at least spend that time working on your business, whatever that looks like, more, because I think we can all work on it a little bit more. And I can tell you that given those survey results, given all the information that we know, you being the teacher are really probably the number one thing that's going to get folks to that class and retain them in that class and coming back. So I have total confidence in you. And I'm always happy to talk more about this topic, a lot of branding topics, as Ali will know, but specifically this idea of personal branding, please reach out. I'm always happy to answer questions or bounce ideas back and forth. And I also want to see if we have questions.
I just want to say about the business, which I think for a lot of yoga teachers, they're like, I don't have a business, I'm just teaching, but really, like, literally when you teach with Good Elephant, you are a subcontractor, which makes you, you know, in a way, a business. Whether that business is a fun, hobby, passion business, or it's a serious way that you're trying to make a living, thinking of it in that way, it is possible for it to be fun and it is possible for it to be heartfelt. I know we get scared of this word business, but it's in my head. I've had a lot of work to do with turning that around and saying, no, this can be my life, but having my own business doesn't make me, this serious entrepreneur who only cares about money, or it's more of, it can be a fun game. So I just wanted to talk about the word business because that kind of scares a lot of
Thank you.
people.
If you want to unmute yourself, we can definitely, I'm really curious if you guys have any questions or comments or ideas. I know everybody here probably too has worked on their own personal brand in some form or another.
I would probably just say, I mean, I am not the best at doing this, but I think we sometimes get the message, if you're in the more spiritual realm, that it's, somehow bad to market yourself or brand yourself or whatever. But otherwise, how the hell else are people gonna find out about you, and you could help them? And I think service, and also to make a living out of it. There's also nothing evil or wrong about that either. So yeah, but you've given me a lot to think about, because I know I use my personal name and stuff, and it's like, okay, probably need to change that, hone that, and just put a bit more thought into this. So thanks very much.
Great. I'm glad it was, that was one of my goals, is just to kind of plant some seeds and
For sure.
get folks thinking about it.
It did. Thanks.
Wonderful. Anything else?
Thank you, Fran.
Yeah, you're welcome. And if for the folks listening to this on the recording, please use that email, to reach out and just say, hey, one more question. I'm happy to answer anything later on.